I did it! I finally succumbed to the hype. Not only did I watch Heated Rivalry the show, I also read the book, both within the same week, and I'm here to report the differences between them. For context, Heated Rivalry was a 2019 novel written by Rachel Reed as part of her Game Changers series, which features male-male couples in professional hockey. Heated Rivalry is actually the second book in the series, which currently has 6 books, with a 7th slated for fall 2026. The show Heated Rivalry started filming in early 2025 with Jacob Tierney as showrunner. It primarily adapts Book 2, following rivals Shane Hollander and Ilya Rozanov, though Episode 3 also pulls in material from Book 1, featuring another couple, Scott and Kip. The show premiered on Crave in Canada, was later picked up by HBO Max in select territories, and has already been renewed for a 2nd season. Before we continue, spoiler warning for both the book and show ahead. Let's start with the casting. Shane Hollander is Asian Canadian, half Japanese on his mother's side. He's described in the book as a pretty boy with flawless, distracting skin and a smattering of dark freckles across his nose and cheekbones. He's canonically hot enough that Cosmopolitan once named him the #1 hottest man in the NHL. Hudson Williams, who is Asian himself, fits this description remarkably well. Admittedly though, I watched the show first, so Hudson and Connor Storrie, who plays Ilya, have pretty much taken over the mental image of both characters in my head. Ilya's depiction changes slightly more between page and screen. In the novel, Ilya has light brown curls, sometimes long enough to be slicked back and tied in a little bun. He also has a cleft chin covered in stubble that grows into a full dark beard at times. His teeth are supposed to be unnaturally white due to most of them not being real, and Rachel Reed always describes his smile as crooked or lopsided. I counted. She does it 18 times. Cosmopolitan magazine ranks Ilya number 5 in their list of hottest hockey players, which he resents. The most obvious physical change is the missing tattoo. In the book, Ilya has a grizzly bear on his chest, originally for Russia, but it continues to work once he joins the Boston Bears. In the show, due to licensing, the team becomes the Boston Raiders, and the tattoo disappears alongside it. Connor Storrie also has a prominent mole on his face, which doesn't detract from his good looks at all, but it is noticeably absent from the text. One thing that does remain consistent between the book and show is Ilya's signature crucifix necklace. Both Shane and Ilya are meant to be beautiful, stunning, stupidly attractive, and I think that Hudson and Connor deliver on this very generously. Where the book and show diverge a little bit more significantly is in the characters' interiors. One of the biggest things missing from the show is the full scope of Shane's relationship and sexual history. In the show, Shane reads as almost entirely inexperienced before Ilya. Outside of him, and eventually Rose, Shane doesn't really hook up with anyone else. In the book, Shane grapples with his sexuality long before he comes out to his parents at the cottage. In fact, he actually enters the NHL draft with a girlfriend who he thinks of while him and Ilya get acquainted with each other at the gym. They break up shortly after, and even though Shane admits to start noticing men more, he continues hooking up with plenty of girls, like at least 2. Not like all the way sex. He had been blown by 2 different girls since July, and he had enjoyed it, with his eyes closed, and he hadn't thought about Ilya's dark, wet lips or his crooked smile at all. Later in the series, when Ilya and Shane have Skype sex, they explicitly catalog Shane's other partners, which includes 2 men. Mexico Top and Hollywood Blowjob Guy. And me, Ilya summarizes. And a bunch of disappointed women, Shane laughs. A bunch? A few. Anyway, I'm trying to jerk off here. Speaking of disappointed women, let's talk about Rose, who, in my opinion, was not nearly disappointed enough. In fact, Rose, along with her friend Miles, are given a slightly expanded role in the show, and it's one of the changes that I didn't quite love. In the book, during the breakup/coming out scene, Rose keeps it really simple. She says that she had largely guessed, due to Shane's complete lack of interest in having sex with her. In the show, this understanding gets layered on much more heavily. Rose adds that she's dated a lot of guys who turned out to be gay. She also kisses Shane at the end of the conversation, which feels pretty inappropriate given that he's just come out as gay. Her friend Miles is also more involved, including a scene where he's all over Shane on the dance floor right in front of Rose, which she seems totally fine with. As a result, she comes across as almost too supportive. I mean, I just think it would have been a little bit more realistic if she was allowed even a small moment of genuine disappointment or sadness. After all, she did really like Shane. Instead, she's almost too eager to pivot straight into best friendship. That said, Hudson's acting in this scene is incredible. I mean, look at what this man can do with just his eyes. The show also makes the Rose arc slightly more tolerable because Ilya's disdain for it is so palpable on screen. So where the book and show diverge here is what this Rose relationship represents for Shane. In the show, dating Rose feels like Shane's first genuine attempt at giving a woman a real try. In the book, because we already know Shane has hooked up with women and hasn't enjoyed it, the relationship feels more forced, an act of denial rather than exploration. As Shane puts it, maybe he just hadn't met the right girl yet. This was what he kept telling himself. In both versions, though, we're meant to understand the same thing. Shane is totally kidding himself with this relationship with Rose. Where the show pares back Shane's sexual context, it largely expands Ilya's, filling in his past with additional relationships. In the book, Ilya mentions his coach's son only in passing to provide context for his previous experience with men. In the show, the coach's son becomes an actual character who we meet, and he's given a name, Sasha. Svetlana also gets a major upgrade. In the book, she's a relatively minor character introduced more than halfway through as Ilya's favorite hookup outside of Shane. They met at a Lamborghini dealership in Boston, and she's described as the daughter of a retired Russian Boston Bears player with blue eyes and long, straight blonde hair. The show completely reimagines her. She's now the minister's daughter, a childhood friend, and looks nothing like her book counterpart. I genuinely enjoy the show's decision to make Svetlana a bigger part of Ilya's life. While Shane has Hayden as his best friend in both versions, Ilya doesn't really have anyone that close to him in the book. Elevating Svetlana's role brings balance to the story and gives Ilya much-needed support during difficult moments. The show also devotes way more time to Ilya's relationships with his father and brother. Their core traits remain the same. His father is a decorated cop dealing with dementia, and his brother constantly demands money. But the post-funeral confrontation is entirely new. It's not canon. In the book, Ilya does eventually cut his brother off, but not as explicitly or as powerfully as he does here. I found the scene really essential to Ilya's character development, particularly in showing him finally setting boundaries with his family. I also love that Svetlana steps in, not just to back him up, but to express her unconditional love and support of his relationship with Jane, aka Shane. Shane's family is also much more present in the show, especially his mom Yuna, who often functions as Shane's de facto brand deal manager. It's probably realistic, but it definitely did sour my view of her a little bit and made me question if Shane's parents are benefiting a little bit too much from his income. Adding fuel to the fire, after Shane comes out to his parents, Yuna steps outside. She isn't angry, she's hurt that Shane felt like he couldn't tell her sooner. It's meant to be tender, but it kind of rubs me the wrong way because the moment suddenly becomes about her feelings and asking for Shane's forgiveness, much like Rose earlier reframing Shane's coming out around her own history of dating gay men. Don't get me wrong, both reactions from the women are understandable and arguably more realistic, but they do differ vastly from the book. After coming out in the book, Shane's parents are a little shaken, but Yuna immediately keeps pace. Okay, what's the plan? That's the overbearing mom energy that I like to see because ultimately it centers Shane and his future and feels much more supportive than brand deal, Rolex. Ugh, so annoying. Okay, let's get into what everyone actually wants to talk about, which is the sex. Here, I have to say, the show does an incredibly good job at adapting the spice, like a very good job. Hudson and Connor's chemistry is off the charts, and the intimacy between them feels natural and convincing. Pretty much every sex scene in the show is shot very close to how it's described in the book. The key difference between the book and the show is how explicit the book is about using protection. In the book, condoms and lube are used every time the two have sex. In the show, condoms are flashed briefly on screen when Ilya and Shane have penetrative sex for the first time, but never again. Also in the cabin, Ilya eats Shane's ass. Unfortunately, the show did not feel it important to maintain this particular piece of canon. The biggest and most jarring difference between the book and show to me might not be what you expect. What really struck me while I was reading was how often both Ilya and Shane express wanting to end the relationship. They want to end it out of shame, but also because they genuinely don't see a future in it. In the show, we can see how difficult it is for them to hide their relationship. And maybe I'm dense and it's all implied, but neither of them explicitly say or even clearly suggest that they want this relationship to stop. In the book, it's almost mentioned every chapter. I understand why it's there, but it makes me sad because we want it to work, and because it's a work of fiction, we know it will work, so it's already hard enough watching them struggle. I don't need to read about them denying their happiness over and over. It just felt like salt in the wound, you know? The show also omits a small but meaningful detail, Shane's separate apartment. In the book, Shane never invites Ilya over to his actual apartment. Instead, he has a rental property with all 3 floors bought out so that they can hook up in optimal privacy. It's like literally a physical manifestation of how compartmentalized their relationship is. In the show, Ilya visits a similar property, but it appears to be Shane's actual residence. This distinction matters, because in the book, Ilya literally dreams of the day when Shane lets him into his real space, when they can finally hook up on his actual bed, the one that Ilya had never shared because he had never been to Shane's real home. Ilya even goes so far as to ask Shane, when they're Skyping, if he can see his bedroom. But of course, it turns out to be boring, just as Ilya expected. The real payoff happens later when Ilya arrives at Shane's cottage. "This is your room," Ilya says when Shane shows him around. "Yeah, probably even more so than my room back in Montreal. This place is home." "Years," Ilya sighed, "years I have wanted to have you in your real bed." Another major Ilya moment that changes significantly in the show is his declaration of love for Shane over the phone in Russian. In the book, there's no long, tender monologue, just a brief summary of what was said, mostly ranting about his family, with an almost offhand, "and on top of everything, I'm pretty sure I'm in love with you and I don't know what to do about it." Pretty sure? In the show, Ilya seems very sure. It's less of a tentative admission and more of a full-on confession. Ugh, that scene is just great. I love it. There are a lot of smaller changes throughout the adaptation. Treadmills are swapped out for exercise bikes, Shane is the one to approach Rose instead of the other way around, and Ilya is asked twice to come to the cottage in the book versus only once in the show. If the Kip and Scott timeline felt strange to you, you would be right, because in the book, there's only a 6-month gap between Kip's birthday and when Scott kisses him after winning the cup. In the show, that gap is stretched to 3 years, something that Francois Arnaud, who plays Scott in the show, admits later was a fuck-up. The show also places more emphasis on Shane's ethnicity, which showrunner Jacob Tierney had said was intentional. I think that intention is really well-meaning, but the delivery was super heavy-handed to me. Sports commentators are claiming that they are breaking boundaries, Yuna reminds her son that he's a role model for kids who look like him, and Rose asks him point-blank if it was hard being the only Asian kid on his team. It's just all very on the nose. Personally, I think it could have been way more interesting if Shane and Ilya had a conversation about being othered. Shane as mixed race, Ilya as Russian. That kind of exchange could have added much more depth to both of their characters. But I understand that that is quite a deviation from what is written in the book. Some of the book's luxury cabin details are also missing, like the full-on hockey facility and the jet skis, likely for budget reasons. Honestly, I kind of prefer it this way. The pared-down cabin keeps the focus on Shane and Ilya being alone for the first time without distractions, as it's meant to be. At last, we've reached the ending. The show unfortunately omits the book's epilogue, which provides much firmer closure. In the book, Ilya finishes out his time in Boston, he moves to Ottawa to be closer to Shane, and together they work on fulfilling that vision of creating a charity together. Shane also comes out to his team, and the story ends with a press conference finally announcing the Irina Foundation. I actually kind of prefer where the show chooses to end instead, a little bit earlier, quieter, with the intimate cottage drive. It feels emotionally complete, even if the ending is less definitive. The Game Changers book series does eventually return to Shane and Ilya in the 6th book called The Long Game. With the show already renewed for a 2nd season, I'm certain that the epilogue and future material will be adapted later. The book's epilogue, in retrospect then, feels like Reed's way of providing closure to her readers before she knew that she would return to Shane and Ilya 4 books later. The book also includes a bonus scene in which Shane and Ilya invite Hayden and his wife Jackie over for dinner. It's an opportunity for Shane to be openly with his boyfriend in front of his best friend. Of course, it goes terribly. Ilya is his usual asshole self, Hayden is incredibly skeptical, and Shane ends up telling both of them off. The two apologize, things settle, and the story ends on a note of earned peace. And Shane and Ilya also have unprotected sex. All in all, Heated Rivalry is one of the most faithful adaptations I've seen in a really long time, which is quite refreshing. I know I've spent a lot of time pointing out differences, but I'd honestly say that the show is like 85% faithful to the book. Most of the dialogue is lifted word for word, and most of the sequence of events matches up perfectly. As a friend put it, well, there's not actually that much to adapt, is there, other than the sex? No, there is. I resent that. The show is so much more than just the sex. The sex is everything. Everything is sex, and sex is tennis, right? Sex is hockey. Yeah, that's how it goes. I'm genuinely excited for the future of this series. Maybe in the meantime, I can read some of the other books. I'm just not quite sure that the other couples will hit quite as hard as Ilya and Shane have for me. They're the best. Please let me know if I missed any differences by leaving a comment down below. This has been an Emily Read This video. We shall end with a prayer. Praise gay hockey smut. Amen.